lower numbers.
Okay. All right. Boker Tov. Today's stuff is Kufav 106. We're a little behind. We pick up on Kufav Amud Bet. And the Gemara starts with, we are with Amar Avur de Shmuel. No, I'm sorry. Tanya, Amar Ben Azai. So it starts with the word Ben Azai. It's about 15 or 18 lines from the bottom. Right? So Kuf Hamid Bet. What did I say? Kufav? I'm sorry. Kuf Hamid Bet. The daf is Kufav. We start on Kuf Hamid Bet. Amar Ben Azai. Gimel Shvuah. There are 3 Shvuot. Okay, I mean, we're dealing with somebody who takes a shvua to deny that he has somebody's property or lost object. What do you have with this object? Oh, I found it, etc. So a little bit we're touching on lost objects. Although now we move from a shvua that somebody is denying that he's holding property incorrectly, from a shvua of edus. One of the cases in the end of Parshas Vayikra is that somebody denies that he has testimony. He knows testimony to his friend, and yadayim lo yagivin asavo. No, he takes a shvua that he doesn't have testimony. So here the question is, first of all, normal testimony that's going to be effective is 2 witnesses, right? So what if it's only 1 witness? And
the witness can cause someone to take a
right.
shvua.
So that's what we're going to look at. So here you approach a person and you say, I approach Michael here and I say, Michael, I think David took my lost object. We were just talking about somebody finding a lost object and not returning it. Like, do you know any testimony? Have you seen that? Have you seen that David took my lost object? Because if so, I need you to come and testify to that so I can get my lost object back from him. He's denying he has it, okay? And you take an oath that you don't know of any such thing. But it turns out you did know something. Okay, so let's take a look. Gimel Shuas. There are 3 types of shuas that somebody could take falsely when he's being asked to testify. Aveda matzati v'lo yiti yodea she'ishalcha. I'm sorry, did I skip a line? But no, the Gimel Shuas. I'm sorry, I skipped up a line. He gerba v'lo b'motzah. You actually, Michael, I said, did you see anybody with my lost object, etc. Now you knew that cow wandering around was mine, but you didn't know who it was who found it. So you denied you knew anything. Okay, you saw somebody find it, but you don't know who, so you denied you didn't know anything, and you took an oath you didn't know anything. Or you knew that somebody found a lost object, but you didn't know for sure that it was my cow. Okay, so you also took an oath to me that you didn't know anything. That's not true. You knew somebody found an object. You weren't certain it was mine, but you knew somebody found a lost object.
You get to the intersection between lying is not like remember.
Well, okay, that's true, but that's not our case. No, I understand, but we can't get into that now. Okay, you did know this fact, but you swore you knew nothing. Lo ba v'lo b'motzah, or you swore you didn't know who that there was a lost object and you didn't know who found it. So the Gemara says, 1 minute. If that's true, if that's the case, you didn't know anything, then obviously you're saying the truth. Lo ba v'lo b'motzah kushei shtava. So you're swearing truthfully. You don't know anything about it. Okay, Amos, so fine. Switch the gears. Ba b'motzah, the exact opposite. You knew who found it and you knew whose lost object was. So you knew some piece of the facts or all of the facts, and you took an oath that you knew nothing. So here's the question. That's 3 interesting scenarios of you swearing about a lost object. Now, what's the halacha about those cases? Do you bring a korban or not for shvuas ha'edus? So it says, L'mai hilchos. For what purpose are we teaching this? Ravami Amar Rabbi Chanina liftur. Ravami says in the name of Rabbi Chanina, then in all those cases, Michael is pater. Even if he knows that David found it and it was my object and he swears he doesn't know anything. So
when are you chayav?
So, okay, we're going to see about that. For Shmuel Amar L'chayev. No, he's chayav. Not only is he chayav when he knows it was my object and David found it, but even if he only knows one of the pieces of evidence, he should come and testify because that could ultimately produce my lost object. If he knows David found it and he wasn't sure what it was, he goes and he testifies, David, you found a lost object, and David might wind up, it might not be mine, but it might be, and that might cause David to force David to admit or whatever. Now, if you know the object and you don't know who, it's a little bit more difficult. But Rashi says, well, you could tell me the region you saw it in, and I'll go ask around in that, in that area. Of course, then it sounds more like, police doing an investigation rather than somebody coming to testify. But anyway, the idea that you're putter is pretty surprising since you know, especially in the last case. So let's take a look. The Gemara says, what's the debate? The debate of a 1A coming to testify about something is that, does he bring a korban shvua, is tied into this debate of tonight. Tanya, we done in Brisa. Hamashbia eid echad. So somebody who causes 1A to take testify. It's not like I say the 2 of you saw something, come and testify, and you both take an oath. That presumably we're saying is the Pashut case in the Torah. because it's a testimony of two.
Wait, meaning
It's
you have
sort
to come together, or let's say you saw it from here, and I saw it from there.
Yeah, those are all good questions, and I can't get into them, Michael. I'm sorry. Okay, but the Pashut case in the Torah, quote unquote Pashut, is that two witnesses are denying they know testimony, and they're both swearing, because then they really are holding back something that would make me win my case. Now, of course, how could I be mechayev both of you when you swear? Each one of you could say, "Well, I was swearing, but I didn't know Michael was going to swear. I didn't swear. I didn't know Dave was going to swear." So that's an important question. Again, we're not going to go into that, but we're going to say that's, of course, a case where clearly the withholding of testimony is stopping me from winning my case, okay? I guess you could also have a scenario, it just occurs to me, that I already have one aide. Michael's already testifying that Joe borrowed money from me. And then I go to David, I say, David, if you come, you'll be the second witness. Okay, so that could be an easier case where your oath is clearly preventing me from winning my case. But here it's only one witness. The best one witness can do for me is make the other guy take an oath. Is that enough? Then refusing testimony, denying testimony when it's not clearly causing me a loss is only causing me to not make the other guy take an oath. And this is similar to the discussion yesterday, because you remember the discussion yesterday was if somebody takes an oath, let's say that he doesn't have chametz shavar lava pesach, right? The oath doesn't directly cause a loss, but it might indirectly cause a loss. Okay, so this is a case about an oath of edus, which might indirectly cause a loss. Okay, so looks at the Hani tonight. The Tanya we turn in Brisa. Where were we? Am I? The Tanya. Mashbia Eidechad Pater. You're exempt because it didn't directly cause any loss. He's lying. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon Mechai. Rabbi Shimon says you're chai. My committee, what's the debating? Marsav davar gam l'mamon kamam dami. Even though denying the testimony is not directly causing a loss, it might indirectly. Because if the aid would come, the guy would have to swear. He might not want to swear, etc. So that fact that it could indirectly cause a loss maybe is enough to make him chayav. Marsav lav kamam dami. No, that's not enough in this case. Okay, so in that way, it was parallel to the earlier discussion about denying somebody something like chametz ravalava pesach, where it might indirectly cause a loss. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Amar Sheshes hakover b'pikadon. Now we're going on to a new topic. We should have really finished that yesterday. Amar Sheshes hakover b'pikadon.
They don't resolve.
They don't resolve them. Okay, hakover b'pikadon. Now somebody basically denies that this is again the classic case in the Torah. You know, we're dealing with the guy takes an oath. I didn't steal, and he stole, and he adds a fifth. So before we even get to the oath, Michael has given me his iPhone. We can make it. We can do sort of. We can be fair with the brands. Like we can do Samsung. I just got that for my son. His Samsung 7 to watch. Okay, and then
it blows up.
And it blows up. And I've been dying to get this because it's got the whole new virtual reality headset. That's why my son was dying to get it. Anyway, so he says to me, "Dove, where's the Samsung? I asked you to hold out for me." And I say, "I don't have it. You never gave it to me. I didn't take an oath. If I take an oath, I'm chayav the principal and a fifth and a korban. I didn't take an oath. So at this stage, I just have to return it. But that's not our interest. Our interest is the following. Nasel of Gaza. The moment I said, I don't have it, I don't know what you're talking about, I become a Gaza.
Is that the moment you appropriate it for yourself?
Well, it was always in my possession.
No,
you gave it to me. What do you mean appropriate?
You started using it.
No, you don't have to use it. Nope, you don't have to use it. As soon as I deny,
if I use it first, then I'm
maybe right. That probably yes. Shlichus yad is a different case, and yes, but without that, as my just denying it is so now it's in my possession. I denied it was his. That's the act of stealing it. Okay, so that moment I become a goslin. The chayiv b'onsin,
and when you take the shua and bait it, not when you do
even without a shua based in, no, just on the street. You say to me, "Could you give me back my phone next week?" And I say, "I don't know what the heck you're talking about. You never gave me a phone." Okay, at that moment that I am denying it, I am essentially taking it for myself, even though I did no physical act, and I become a goslin. And if anything happens, even if I'm not to blame, I'm chayav because now I stole it and I have to reimburse Michael, like any goslin has to reimburse, even if an accident happens. The Tana Tuna, we taught similarly in the Mishnah, V'kichesh or in the Breita, V'kichesh ba, this is on the Psukim in the Torah, it says he denies it and he swears falsely. So it's going to work through what happens at each stage, even before the swearing. Okay, so you denied that you have somebody's pikadon. Lamadu onish, we know the punishment.
I thought that's an aveda though.
Yeah, but it includes everything. But yes, but we're not limiting it to that. Okay, Lamadu onish, we know the punishment. Now it doesn't say what the punishment is. What do you mean we know the punishment? The punishment for a shvua is that you add the fifth. But here, it's what we're assuming is the punishment is that you become a gatan and you're chayiv the principle. As soon as you do the act of the kicheshba, as soon as you do the act of denying it. Ashara minayin. Where do you know that you're not allowed to deny? Okay, it says do not deny, and this is understood in the context of of denying in a way that effectively is misappropriated.
Well, that comes later.
So my love doesn't matter. I mean, whatever, you can have psukim later that prove that. My love onish mamon. So you see, it says you're punished from that moment. Now, what punishment is it if you didn't take a shvua? Presumably, it means you're a goslin and you're fully liable. Lo onish shvua. No, it means the onish of if you take a shvua, that then you add the fifth. Someone says, what do you mean? We're not up to that yet. How many times say for the end of it says the ishtava? If the end talks about when you take a shvur that you bring the chomish and the asham, the cloud duration, the low ishtava. At the beginning of this brayta, we're talking you didn't take a shvur, and it still says there's some punishment. Diktani, what does the end of the brayta say? Seifa, v'nishpa al shaka. That's the pasuk. The kicheshpa, you denied it and you sweared falsely. So the end of the brayta says lamanu onish. So we know the punishment for swearing falsely. You got a fifth, you bring a korban. Asara minai. Where do you know you're not allowed to swear falsely in a way of denying somebody, somebody's claim to their property? Right? That's the pasuk. And the end of the pasuk is the lo tishba'u b'shmi la shakir. So exactly that pasuk in Kedoshim is saying exactly this. Don't deny that you have somebody's property and lie in that denial and swear falsely about it. So it's exactly this, denying and swearing falsely. That's the pasuk that prohibits it. And the consequence is you add a fifth and you bring a korban. Okay? Now, the Sefer Dishtava, the end of the Bryce is talking about you take an oath, and the consequence is that you add a fifth and bring a korban. Reisha de lo ishtava. The beginning when it's saying you're punished is even without a shvua. So what punishment is there? It must be the punishment that you're liable, that you're a goslin. You could say no. I divide Dishtava. The beginning and the end is you took a shvua. When it's talking about two types of punishments, it means two types of punishments based on what you did after the oath. Did you admit, or did witnesses come? Asu edim. If the witnesses came, then chayiv ba'onsin. Then you have to, then you're okay. When you took a shvua, you're a goslin. Now, what's the punishment? The punishment for a goslin is you're liable, but that's only after the shvua. So then, why do we have two scenarios of talking about punishment? Well, if you admitted that you swore falsely, and ironically, the punishment is even worse. Okay, oduye odi. If you admitted, chay b'keren v'chomesh v'ashan, then you do the principle, the fifth, and the korban. So this brayta sounds like there's a consequence just for denying, and that seems to be exactly what we're saying. Just the act of denying makes you a goslin. But the Gemara says no. The brayta is saying there's a consequence for swearing falsely. Swearing falsely makes you a goslin. So why does it divide it into two cases? To tell you, if you swear falsely, then you're a goslin, you're chayav ba'onsin. That's if witnesses come. But if you swear falsely and you admit it, then ironically you have even a more severe punishment because then it's kapara, and then you bring add a fifth and you bring a korban.
I'm sorry. So what happens if you just with no witness?
And you just deny it, no consequence.
So is it a contradiction?
No, it's not a contradiction. The point is the simple sense of the brayta was a proof, and the Gemara said it doesn't have to prove it. It could be talking about something else. So the claim is so neither. You can't prove one way or the other.
We don't know.
Well, right now we're going to continue the sugya. So the claim is that denying makes you a goslin. This brayta seemed to prove it. It seemed to say as soon as you deny, there's a consequence, and presumably the consequence is you're chayiv in the principle. And the answer is no. Maybe it's talking about that you took an oath. When you take an oath, you're a goslin, and that's when there's a consequence. But if you deny by itself, you're not. So now the Gemara is going to continue to try to prove this one way or the other. Let's take a look. Masiv Rami Bar Chama. So Rami Bar Chama asks, we have a Mishnah in Shavuos that says that if Michael has to take an oath, and he's not he's a motive in mitzvahs, he has to take a shvua, okay, and and he's not able to, right? So, or he says, that whatever. There's a case like the person who has to take an oath, or he makes me want to take the oath anyway, and I'm not able to take the oath, okay, because I am puzzled to take an oath. And then it talks about the monetary consequences if I'm obligated to take an oath and I'm not able to. Okay, but the point is, what would be a scenario where I'm not able to take an oath? So the Mishnah says,
you're a goslin already.
Right, okay, if I am suspect of swearing falsely, what would be a case when I've been suspect of swearing falsely? Whether there's evidence that I swore falsely by testimony, meaning I definitely swore falsely in the past, and that means I can't be trusted to swear truthfully now.
Ever?
Okay. Well, unless there's tshuva, and then what constitutes tshuva? Okay, so what is the evidence that I swore falsely in the past? Whether I swore falsely about denying testimony to somebody, or I swore falsely that I was holding on to somebody's object and I denied it. In any of those cases, even if it was not a shvu about mammon, even if I just took an oath about something trivial, right? I took an oath that yes, I went to the Mets game yesterday, and I'll swear to you that I did, and then I'm lying, even if it has nothing to do with money. Okay, any type of evidence that I swore falsely makes me puzzled to take a shvu. Now, why is that relevant for us? Because Gemara says the following: if we're dealing with a case about a pikadon, why do I have to have sworn to make me puzzle? If this statement of Shmuel is correct, as soon as I denied, Michael said, "Where's my iPhone? Where's my Samsung?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I never had it." So that if Shmuel's statement is right, it was a Shmuel. I'm sorry, I keep thinking it's Rav Sheshes. If Rav Sheshes' statement is right, I should be, and I'm a Goslin at that moment. Then I'm puzzle for a shvua. A Goslin is puzzle for a shvua. So why does the Mishnah say I'm puzzle for a shvua only when I take an oath that I don't have his pikadon? According to Rav Sheshes, I should be puzzle from a shvua from the moment I denied having his pikadon. Okay, the question's clear? All right. So Gemara says, okay, so you could say the following. Where are you talking about? The Kai Ba'aga. When Michael said, "Where's the iPhone?" Like the iPhone, it wasn't on my possession. I had lent it to my kid and he had it off in school or whatever. It was out somewhere, who knows where it was. So what that act of denying doesn't make me a Goslin. Because why? Because I'm only denying because Michael's going to say, "What do you mean you don't have it? I gave it to you to watch. What do you mean it's somewhere else? Like I want it now." So I don't want Michael to give me a hard time. So ironically, rather than having given me a hard time, I'm just going to lie to his face, and he knows he gave it to me. I don't know what you're talking about, but somehow that's easier because there's a sense that I'm not really planning on keeping it to myself. I'm just buying myself time. Okay, if I have it in my possession and I can give it to him and I'm denying it, then it's only because I'm keeping it to myself. But if it's somewhere not directly in my possession, we don't translate my kfira as an act of taking it. Okay, so
even though you let someone else take it.
Yeah. I shouldn't have given that example. The most cases, it's a cow. It's a cow, and I didn't do anything wrong with it. Right. It's a cow, and it's off grazing somewhere in the swamp. Okay. So because for whatever reason I'm buying time, that's a scenario where Rav Sheshes did not say it. Rav Sheshes only said it if people could prove it was on my person when I was denying it. Okay. So I'm not really denying it. I'm not really planning on keeping it. I'm going to just push him off. Then I have to go and retrieve it, and then I'll give it back to him. And then I can say, "Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about it." Somehow it's easier for me to lie and deny it and then claim that I had forgotten than to say I know he wants it and to say I don't have it and then get him to yell at me right now. Okay, so it's pretty ironic, but that's what we're saying.
You could also
all right?
say, I'd be able to get it for you in a day.
I understand. I don't understand why this is exactly true.
Well,
By the
we
way,
didn't even get it for me in a day or two. That iPhone, you're supposed to be you're supposed to be watching it.
But either way,
I understand. I don't know why it's better to lie this way than to tell the truth. But we always know people often lie rather than tell the truth, and it would have been easier to tell the truth. By the way, though, another way you could say it, which is not exactly what the Gemara is saying, is that it's not just that I'm buying time, so I'm not intending to keep it. But when I deny that it's Michael's, the question is, what is the act of being a Goslin? It could be if it's on my property, the act of it being on my property is like an act of possessing it. But if it's not on my property, if it's somewhere in a swamp, even if I'm denying and I want to keep it for myself, where's that sense of possessing, right? Because it's not under my control at that moment. But that's not exactly what the Gemara is saying, okay? So the Gemara is saying is, yes, you're right. There are times when denying doesn't make you a Goslin. That's when it's not directly in your possession. Okay. Teda, you should know this. If somebody denies, Michael says, "Where's the $100, Yomi Dove?" And I say, "I don't know what the heck you're talking about." Okay, and I'm lying, and witnesses prove that I'm lying. I'm still not a Goslin. I'm still kosher la'edus. Why? I tried to steal his $100, but I kofar b'pikadon puzzle'edus. If I said I don't know where your Samsung is, I'm a puzzle. What's the difference? Either way, I'm not giving him what I owe him. I'm stealing it. So the answer is that if I'm not giving him his iPhone, the only reason is Samsung. The only reason is because I want to keep it to myself, and I'm a guy. If I'm denying the loan, it's because I want to buy time. Okay. Now again, why don't I just say I don't have the money on me? I'm working on getting it, because then he's going to yell and says that's what you've been saying for the last week or whatever. I can never trust you. Somehow I feel it's easier just to deny it now and then come back to him when I get the money. Okay, so if you're lying, even in the case of not giving somebody money that's owed to them, you're not necessarily a goslin if you're just doing it to buy time. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this, top of Kofav.
So it's the same thing by Picado.
By Picado, depending on if it's in your possession or not.
It's actually not in his possession that he really doesn't know if he can get it back.
Yeah, but we're not necessarily limiting it. Right, but we're not limiting it to that case. Even if you know you could, it's enough that you're buying time. The Hamar Ilfa, but doesn't Ilfa say, so again, challenging this idea that the question whether a shavua, whether denying makes you a goslin, doesn't Ilfa say shavua kona, an oath is act makes you possess it. So we assume what that means is only when you take the oath do you become a goslin. Shvuhu dekanya, when you take the oath denying it, that's when you become a goslin. Avakfira lo kanya, the denying itself does not make you take possession. So the Gemara says no, achinami dekai ba'agam. Yeah, fine. That'll be a case when the cow is off in the swamp. So fine, that's a case. There are cases when denying doesn't make you a goslin, and you're only a goslin at the stage of taking an oath. But when it is directly on your possession and you deny, that's when Rav Sheshes says that you do become a goslin at that moment. The Ibaisim. Now we're done with Rav Sheshes. We're done with this question of when you become a goslin, at the time of denying or the time of Shvuah. Just to warn you, we're going to take a whole turn, and the whole daf today, now that we're on the official daf today, is going to basically focus on this statement of Ilfa that Shvuah is koneh. But we're going to give it a very different meaning than we gave it before. Before we said it means that at the act of Shvuah you become a goslin. Now be prepared for a radically different meaning of this phrase that a Shvuah is koneh. The Ibai Sema,
we didn't resolve.
We didn't resolve. We had his claim. We had some argument whether we could prove it. We don't know, like many things. Okay, the Ibai Sema, if you want, I can tell you. My Shvuah koneh. What does Shvuah koneh that Ilfa means? It means something completely different, which we're now going to focus on. Okay, Kid Rav Huna, like Rav Huna says. Amar Rav Huna, Amarav. Manali biyadcha. Somebody says, you have $100. Michael says to me, Dov, where's the $100 you owe me? Well, Omer, ain't lecha biyadi. No, you don't have, I don't borrow any money from you, but nishpa.
I'm sorry, this is a Mava or this is a Picado?
Either way. Okay, and I take an oath. Okay, classic case in the Torah. I'm a goslin. I owe him, if I admit to it, I give him a fifth and a korban. And then witnesses come and show that I was lying, that I borrowed the money, I had the Picadon. So you know what Rav Huna says? Potter. I don't have to give him anything. What do you mean? I stole it with an oath and the whole thing. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, "V'lakach be'alav v'lo yishalem." So the point is, Michael has a claim against me. The Torah says I take an oath and I don't pay. So obviously the pshat in the Torah here is I take an oath and we assume without any other evidence that oath means that I'm telling the truth, and therefore I don't have to pay him. The oath got me out of my obligation because there's no other evidence at this stage. But Rav Huna's reading it is, once you've taken the oath about a claim, you'll never have to pay for the claim, even if it's proven that you were lying.
What about the whole case of the Torah that the Adam comes?
So the Gemara is going to deal with that. How do you ever pay? What's the other case of the Torah? What's the other case that a person admits and he pays the fifth and he brings a korban? And I mean, right. So we're going to deal with all of that. But this is like wild also. What's the svara? Well, I paid you with my oath. What do you mean? First of all, it was a false oath. Second of all, we're like my grandmother used to. That and $1, and then
yeah,
exactly. That and $5 to get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Exactly. Like my grandmother used to say, you take the credit, I'll take the cash. Like, what is your oath going to do for me? Okay, but here he says, no, I gave you my oath, I don't have to pay you. The lack of okay, so this is like a radical, crazy statement. So now we're going to see if we can make any sense of this, or at least fit it into any of the facts that we have. Okay, here it was. I swore falsely. It's proven it. Once I took an oath about a claim, I never have to pay again. Okay, Gufa. So let's look at this statement. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, Manali biyadcha v'alo me'en lecha biyadi klum b'nishbo bo'edim pater. Okay, I denied it. I swore. Witnesses prove I'm lying. I'm exempt. So now Amarava. So now we're going to try. Because we said it before to explain why the bright wasn't a contradiction to Rav Sheshes. So that was just getting rid of the Rav Sheshes discussion. Now we're going to look at the claim. Okay. So Amar. So now we're going to try to come to put it, make it manageable to some degree. Amar Rava, mistavra milsa derav b'milva. That makes sense with a loan, because then at least my obligation to Michael is abstract. Now the money has been spent. Even if it hasn't been spent, it's like it's been spent. As soon as he lends me the money, he no longer owns that cash itself. No, but at least we can talk about, since it's not like my physical object is in your house, it's just an abstract debt, we could somehow say that debt gets canceled by a shvua. It doesn't make any sense, but at least it's not like it's not like my Samsung is right there on your table. I see it there. How can you not give it to me? It's just a debt, so we can cancel a debt. Shemitah cancels debt, so a shvua can cancel a debt. Okay, I don't understand it, but that's at least he's trying to limit, this crazy statement. Okay, so he says, it's only an abstract debt. But if you gave an object to watch and the guy swears falsely, that always belonged to the owner. How does taking an oath make that object no longer belong to the owner? So the Gemara says, that's not true. Like in truth, Amar Rav afilu b'pikadon. Rav is saying this claim that you take a shvua, you give a guy a shvua against his claim, you're off the hook, even if you're lying, even if you have his pikadon in your house. Okay, because the pasuk v'lakach ve'alav v'lo yishalem is about a case of somebody gave you an object to watch. Okay, so we got this crazy claim that you're given an object to watch, you swear that you don't have it, you're lying, you're in all those things. The guy's object is still in your house. He took the shvua, you're off the hook. All right, the Gemara is not going to give any logic to that. Right now, it's just trying to see, can it fit into everything else we know that says that that's not true, right? Because how do you ever make a guy pay after he's taken a false shvua?
Does he have a moral obligation here?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so anyway, so we're going to keep on trying to limit this to some degrees that it's manageable. Okay, Yosef Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman was sitting. Telling over this position of Rav. Ezer Ravacha Bar Minyomi to Rav Nachman. So Ravacha Bar Minyomi challenges Rav Nachman. Like, how could Rav say such a thing? Like, and here we're going to do. Okay, what's the challenge? Here's a case where Heichad Piktoni. So somebody says, right? This is I forget if it's a Breita or I think it's a Breita. Anyway, somebody says, where's the object that I get entrusted to you? I'm like Avad. That got lost. I'm like I force you to swear to me that that's what happened to it. V'amar amen, yes, amen. I take a shvua. Okay, so he's lying. He's stealing it with his false oath. And witnesses testify that he consumed it, meaning that he took it for himself. So Mishalim is a Karen. In that case, he has to pay, since it was witnesses. He's a Goslin and he took a false oath or whatever. But because he didn't admit it himself, he just pays the principal. If he admitted himself, ironically, he pays more because it's for kapara. He pays not only the principal, but he adds a fifth and he brings a korban. But anyway, bottom line it's saying is, this is the case in the Torah. Somebody swears, witnesses come, they pay it. If he admits it, he pays a fifth and a korban. According to Rav, he made an oath. He should be off the hook. How does Rav ever have a guy paying after he took an oath? So Amalei Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman said to defend Rav. What are you talking about? When Rav says the oath is like payment, it's only an oath in Beis Din. But an oath done outside of the court, that is an oath that could make you pay, that's an oath that doesn't constitute payment. All right, so this case where you would pay the principal or you pay a fifth and bring the korban, that's when it's outside of Beis Din. When Rav says the oath gets you off the hook, that's in Beis Din. Amar Lei said 1 minute. If we're only talking here in this case of an oath outside of Beis Din, Ema Seifa. Let's look at the second case of this. It might actually be a Mishnah. No, I'm sorry, it's a Mishnah. It's the Mishnah coming up. Okay, let's look at the second part of the Mishnah. Heicham Piktoni, where is my second scenario? Where's the object I entrusted to you? Amalo Nignav. He doesn't say it was lost, he said it was stolen. And if somebody takes a false oath claiming the object was stolen when it wasn't, he becomes the Ganav, and he pays kefel. Okay, that's the difference. Saying if it was lost or nigzal and you're lying, you pay the principal. If you say it was nignav and you're lying through a false oath, you pay kefel. So that's what the Mishnah is talking about. Okay, Hecha Bitoni was Nignav. The Vamar Amen Mashpiachani, I'll take an oath. Vamar Amen, yes. The Edom Yinimo Shgnavo, and witnesses testify that he's the Ganav. Misham Tershlume Kefel, you pay Kefel. But if he admits on his own, then Misham Karen V'chomish V'asham. Then it's that classic case of the fifth and the korban. Okay. The Isakut, now, we have said that all these cases that the Shvua does not constitute payment are cases where it took place outside of Beis Din, right? Rav would say once you make the Shvua, you're completely off the hook. So how do you explain all these cases where you wind up paying after a false oath? Shvua outside of Beis Din. He's going to say that can't be for this case. Why? If you say these cases of paying are outside of Beis Din where the Shvua was, Mika Kefel. You wouldn't pay Kefel. Now, we haven't proven it, but we're going to sort of say, when the Torah speaks about somebody swearing falsely about Geneva and paying Kefel, that's clear. It's like Ad Elohim Yavod Dvar Shnehem, right? It's coming to the judges. It's very clear that case of a Shvua about Geneva where you pay Kefel is in Beis Din. Okay, so we've got this problem, right? We got this Mishnah that talks about taking oaths and paying the principal, or paying the principal and a fifth and a korban, or paying kefel. And according to Raz, anytime you take an oath, you're off the hook. And you can't say that this is all out of Beis Din, because the kefel case is clearly in Beis Din. So if it's all in Beis Din, why aren't you off the hook in all these cases? So the Gemara says, Amarle, he said back to him, I could respond to you and tell you, the first case when you swear it was lost, that was outside of Beis Din. The second case when you swear it was nignov, where you pay kefel, that was in Beis Din. And what we would have to say is the following. We'd have to say that when you say nignov, I don't know if I'm losing everybody here. I'm losing myself. No? Okay. Let me just here. Maybe I'm losing myself. And I need better markers. Okay. Anyway. Okay. So here's what the Mishnah says. If you say avad, okay, and you're nishpa, okay, so Aiden comes, you pay Karen. If you're Hodak, you pay Karen, Chomish, Ashna. Okay, if you say Nignov and you're nishpa and you're lying, okay, Aiden come, you pay Karen. You pay Kefel because you became a Ganav. Okay, and if you're Hoda, you pay Karen, Chomish, and Asham. That's what the Mishnah says.
And Nigzal is the same as
Yeah, Avad would also be Nigzal. Or Nanas, anything other than Nigzal. Okay? Now, the question here is, according to Rav, anytime you took a Shvua, you should be off the hook. Okay? So we say, how could you ever be paying here? So we say this is Chutz L'Beitin. Okay? But now the Gemara says 1 minute. But if it's chutz, you would never pay Kefel Chutz L'Beitin. Okay? So what we're going to say is you never pay Kefel Chutz L'Beitin. So we're going to say, okay, maybe this case is Bid Beitin. Okay, maybe the safe is Bid Beitin and the rate is Chutz L'Beitin. Now, even before we say that, the question here is 1 minute. But we left with the same question. If it's Bid Beitin, then the Shvua should count as payment. Why do you pay Kefel? So there, the Gemara is implicitly saying, no. A Shvua that makes you a Ganev, that makes you pay Kefel, that would be like an except. We're implicitly assuming that would be an exception to Rav's rule. Okay? So this one case of paying Kefel, that's the one case that a Shvua would not count as payment. And that would be based in. But everything else would be like, even this case would be like Chutz L'Beitin. Okay? So it's like, that's a really bad answer. All of these cases where the Shvua doesn't count as payment are Chutz L'Beitin. This one case where you're paying Kefel, that's where the Shvua is in Beis Din and the Shvua doesn't count as payment. Okay, so they give it like this. I could answer you. So to cut the bright in parts, which parts are in Beis Din and out of Beis Din. I'm not going to give you a bad answer. That's a good thing. Nobody likes a bad answer. So then give me a better answer. So I divide Bid Beitin. Fine, it's all in Beis Din. So we're back to the question. Why doesn't the Shvua count as payment? Below kasha, kan b'kafatz, kan b'shalo kafatz. So somehow it seems like just as bad of an answer, okay, but it's all in Beit Din, okay, it's all Bid Beitin, and that's why there's going to be kefal. But the point is, in order for the Shvua to count as payment, not only does it have to be in Beit Din, the good judges have to impose the Shvua on you, have to force you to make a Shvua. But if you jumped up and made the Shvua on your own, or Rashi says the guy who jumped up is your litigant. He jumped up and he said, when he said, Jenna, make a shvua to me, and you make the shvua before, and the judges didn't say you had to make it. That just happened right there in front of the judges. That for Rav would not count as a shvua, as payment. Okay, so here that it is not a payment, your shvua, that's kafetz. Okay, presumably here also it's not a payment, it's kafetz. Here the tefel in the Torah is only in basin and when the judges made you do it. So this is a case of low kafetz. So it's pretty much just as bad of an answer. We're cutting up the cases in the Mishnah about what type of a shvua it is. But somehow he feels to say it's all in based in is a better answer than say some is in and some is out. Okay, but it's obviously a very weak answer. To have these cases work for Rav, the shvua isn't a payment, you have to create a special scenario that's either not in based in or it's in based in but not imposed by based in. Okay, so that's what he says. Kam b'kafetz, kam b'shalo kafetz. Amalei Rami bar Cham Rav Nachman. So Rami bar Cham said to Rav Nachman, Michti, because Rav Nachman was giving all these bad answers for Rav. He says, listen, Michti, let's take a look. The Rav lo sfir lecha. You don't even hold of Rav's position. So mashkuni nafshecha de Rav lama lecha. Why are you? It's so great. We have the same phrase in English. Why are you mortgaging your soul? That's what it means. A mashkon is like collateral. Why are you mortgaging your soul for Rav's positions? It's such a crazy idea. You don't hold for it. Why are you going out on a limb and giving these bad answers, for Rav's position? So he says, Mashkuni nafshecha de Rav lama lecha. So he said back, Amalei, he said back to him, Lifrush de Rav. Now, you know what? I'm not coming to defend Rav. I'm coming to explain Rav, to interpret Rav. The Rav Hachim Mataritz Lolamas Nizin. This is how Rav would explain the Mishnah, which doesn't really answer the question. But he basically, it's sort of like, this is the sake of Talmud Torah. It's, Rav presumably didn't say something that made no sense. So even if I don't hold by it, I want to understand what he was saying. I want to understand how he would explain it. Okay. That was a nice little interlude. Back to the challenges. Okay. The Rav Kra Kamar. How can somebody not hold by Rav? Rav quotes a pasuk. Take the shvua, don't pay. Of course, the pshat of that pasuk means if there's no other evidence. But anyway, how would you otherwise interpret the pasuk? No, Amri, you could say, no, the pasuk isn't telling you a shvua always counts as payment. What the Torah is telling you is anytime there's a biblical shvua, the only type of shvua the Torah imposes on somebody is a shvua to get you out of paying. The Torah never says, I come with a claim against David, I'll take a shvua and then the court will believe me and I'll be able to collect. The shvua, the rabbinic shvuas sometimes are like that. But Torah shvuas never give me proof to allow me to collect. They always serve to allow the other side to be exempt. It's sort of like hamotzi mechaver levaraya. Me making a shvua is not enough evidence for me to be able to extract money from David. The Torah's shvuas are always to allow the other side to take the shvua and not have to pay. So that's v'lakach bala v'lo yishalem does not mean a shvua constitutes payment. That's what Rav said. It means the purpose of a shvua is to get out of paying. A shvua is made by the side that will then not have to pay. It's not made by the side that makes a shvua and then is allowed to collect.
Or maybe phrasing it as it can make nothing happen, but it can't
make something happen. That's a nice way of putting it too. Okay, so kol nishban shebetorah, the purpose of that is to tell you that a biblical shvua in the Torah, nishban v'lo mishalmin. Okay, they take an oath and they don't pay. The owners take and don't pay. To tell you the principle that the only person who takes for shvua is the person that would have otherwise paid. All right, but not to tell you that a shvua constitutes payment. Back to trying to challenge Rav. Masi Rav Amnunas. Rav Amnuna challenged Rav. Hishpia lav chamisha pamim. So I went ahead and I made David here swear 5 times. He denied that he had my object or my loan. I said, take an oath. He says, amen. I said, you know what? Take another oath. He says, amen. 5 times. How many times does he have to now pay me back, right? So the law is bein bifnei beisin, bein shelo bifnei beisin, whether you took the oath in the presence of court, not in the presence of course, the kafar love, and you were denying something you really owed me. For every single oath, David, you got to bring like a chomesh and an asham, whether you have to also repay, the principal every time. Maybe that's, let's see if Rashi says that. Hold on. Chomesh for asham, right? The principal you don't pay more than once. Okay, there's only one principal, but for every false oath, you pay another fifth and you bring another korban. Okay, chayav al kol achas v'achas. Okay, that's what that teaches. Now, what are we going to do with that? Rav Shimon. Now, Rav Shimon says, "Matam. Why is the next oath being mechayev him? He already sort of like got off my pushed me off with the first oath. So because even after he took the oath, David could come and confess up. So since David could fess up, even though he gave me the shvuah, it's not like he still doesn't have my money. He still has my money. And therefore, because he could always admit it, and I go and I challenge him 5 minutes later, and he could admit at that time, taking an oath a second time is once again denying me money that's coming to me. Okay? Yes, you already took an oath, but you're still denying me my rightful claim. You still have my money, and if you would admit it, you would have to pay it. Okay? So that's why each oath is another sin. Now, we got to think, though. What is it clear? It's clear, though, that his first oath does not get him off his liability to me, which is against Rav, right? You took an oath to me. According to Rav, you'll never have to pay me again, even if you were to admit it, okay? And this is clearly also in Beis Din. The hacha kafatz lo matis amris. You can't say it's a case where David just volunteered the shvuah and it wasn't imposed on him by Beis Din. Hishpia alav ktani. The language is you enforced a shvuah on him. You made him make a shvuah. Chutz lebeis din lo matis amris. And you can't give that other bad answer that it happened outside of Beis Din. Bifnei Beis Din ktani. So it says in the presence of the court. It says whether in their presence or not in their presence. So this explicitly is a case. The court made him take a shvuah, and it's clear that even after the first shvuah, he still owes me the money. Pretty good proof against Rav, right? So the Gemara says, "Who mosiv lavu mefarikla?" He asked it, but then he offered up his own answer. Let's start in Ktani. No, you can read this that it's two separate scenarios. Even though it says hishpia lav and it says in Beis Din, read it or rather than read it and. Okay, hishpia lav. I forced David to make a shvuah. Chutz lebeis din, outside of Beis Din. Or scenario number 2, ube Beis Din, or it was in Beis Din, but it was kafatz, but he volunteered the shvuah. Okay, so it's a really bad answer, right? It makes it clear, sounds clear, like I force you to take a shvuah in Beis Din, and that does not get you off the hook. And we split it to say either I forced you or in Beis Din. But if they were both combined, you would be off the hook. Okay, so now it continues. Masiv Rava. So now Rava challenged Rav. You can tell people did not like this claim of Rav. Okay, Balabai is Shatantan is going to be Pikado. Okay, I basically say, now I'll be the bad guy. David says, "Where's my Samsung?" And I said, "Oh, it was Nignav." Remember that case? I say it's Nignav. I'm swearing falsely. I become a Ganav. Okay, the Nishba, and I take a Shvuah. V'hoden, then I admit it. Ubo Adim. And then witnesses come and say that I was lying. If the witnesses, if I admitted before the witnesses came, then I don't pay kefel. I'm a moda b'knas. And what's the halacha about being moda by a false shvuah? The principle, the fifth, and the korban. If I admitted only after the witnesses came, so my admission means nothing if it's after the witnesses came. In that case, mishan tashlume kefel. Okay, I pay kefel. Okay, the asham, but I also do the asham. Okay, because I pay the asham because I admitted. I don't pay the chomish. The chomish, if I'm paying kefel, right, the kefel includes the fifth. I don't have to pay an extra fifth if I'm already paying double. But because I admitted, for my kapara, I bring an asham. Okay, so if the witnesses come first, they make me pay kefel because I said it was nigdav and I was lying. And if then I choose to admit, I'll bring the korban, but I don't have to pay the chomish. That's what that teaches. Now, the hacha chutz lebeis din v'kafetz lo matzis amris. Once again, you cannot say this was out of Beis Din, or you can't say I jumped up. Why? Kefel ktani, because it's a scenario of me paying kefel. And remember, we established before that the only time I would pay kefel for a false shvuah is if it was in Beis Din and imposed by the court. And so what do we have? We have a case. It was in Beis Din, imposed by the court, right? Okay? If the witnesses come, I pay kefel. But if I admit, what did this teach? If I admitted before the witnesses come, I pay the principal. And I pay a fifth. Why is that? I gave you a shvuah. Okay? So we're back to the problem. It was in court. It was imposed on me. That's clear because if the witnesses come, I'm going to pay kefel. If I admit, I still pay the principal and a fifth. So you see, my oath does not constitute payment. So the Gemara says, Elam Rav. So what we're going to do is, the same way we carved out something here, we're going to carve out the one scenario where Rav's statement couldn't be possibly not contradicted by all the evidence. Okay? So Elam Rava, Kol Hoda Lo Kohodeh, any case where I admit that I swore falsely, lo shnatoin tainus avad, lo shnatoin tainus ganav, lo amarav. It doesn't matter whether I was lying that it was stolen or lying that it was lost. Okay, Rav, when it said that my shvua counts as payment, was not a case when I admitted afterwards. Why not? Because the psukim are clear that I pay them. The haksiv, v'hisvada. The Torah says if I confessed, I pay principal. I pay the principal and fifth. So basically what I'm saying is any case in the Torah that contradicts Rav is not the case that Rav was talking about. So one case in the Torah that contradicts Rav is I swear falsely and I admit, and I pay the principal and a fifth. So rather than saying that's a case of chutz lebeistin or kafat, we're just going to say that's not Rav's case. Rav's case is not a case when I admit. When you admit, then you do pay the principal. Okay. So what's the only alternative to admitting? What's the only alternative to paying other than admitting? What's the other case when I have to pay if I swore falsely? Either I admitted or Aiden came. So let's take a look at the Aiden. If I admit, Rav wasn't talking about it. Now, Toin Tainus Ganav Ubo Aiden, if I said it was Nignav and witnesses came, Nami Lo Amarav. Rav also didn't say that case of Aiden when I claimed it was stolen. Daksiv Tashluin Kefel. Because the Torah has a case of paying Kefel when I was lying through a shua. So the Torah has all the cases, okay, except one. Okay, in the Torah, right? The Torah has, v'nishba al shaker, right? Al shaker, then it says v'hitvada, or whatever, and then it says chamishito, and Hashem, and the whole thing. Okay, so that's okay. So that's one case. That's a case of shvua. Hold on. Okay, so this is a tinus of nignav, and this is a tinus of avad or anything else. Okay, any other time, anything else. Okay, so in a case where I was hitvadan, the Torah tells you pay a fifth, and tells you pay. So Rav wasn't talking about those cases because the Torah is clear when you admitted, right? Whatever. The other scenario is witnesses came, but the Torah says if witnesses came and you're nigna, the Torah says shnayim yishalem. Okay, so Rav wasn't talking about that. Okay, so the only case left for Rav to be talking about. I guess I should have done like this. Okay, the Torah says here, when you're hifadah, the Torah says chomesh and asham. Okay, that's in the Torah, chomesh and asham, right? When it's hifadah. So Rav wasn't talking about this. He wasn't talking about Adim and Nignav. That was Shnayim. The only case that Rav was talking about that your shvua counts as payment is you took an oath that it was something other than Nignav and witnesses came. The combination of that is the one case the Torah isn't explicit about what the consequence is, and that's the case where the oath would count as payment.
You can't just be meaning like you take the oath and you neither admit nor do witnesses.
I understand. That's pshat of the psukim. Your oath, because you took the oath, you don't have to pay until any other evidence comes to light. Your oath counts for now, right? Okay. That's pshat. But so Rav's claim is your oath counts as payment. But it can't be any of these cases. The only case left is not Nignav and witnesses came. Okay? So, Nami Loma Rav Daksi Teshumikeva. Ki Kamma Rav, Kigon Shetoin Tainas Avad, Vinishba, Velo Hoda, Ubo Edim. Okay, the one case, it was Avad and witnesses came. That's the one case not in the Torah. That's the case that your shvua counts. The Gemara says, Azar Rav Gamda v'Amar lo Shmaita Kami to Rav Ashi. So Gamda went and told this over to Rav Ashi and said that Rav is trying to explain Rav like this in this way, to limit him to this one case. So Amar Le, he said back to him, Hashta, Umar Rav Hamnuna Kamidi de Rav, the Yadadam Rav Hoda, the Kamosiv Hoda. Rav Hamnuna was Rav's student. And if you remember, Rav Hamnuna asked from one of the cases before, from the Mishnah, where the guy basically, where it says he was, if you take multiple shvuas, right, you're chayav for each one because you could admit in the middle. Remember that bright that we asked from? Right? Remember that when David, you took 5 shvuas to me and you're chayav for each one? And it says because you could have admitted in the middle. So, and he said, oh, but why would admitting have made you chayav? Rav said you're pater. Well, according to you, any case of admitting, Rav wasn't talking about. Rav wasn't talking about scenarios of admitting. So why did Rav Hamnuna, who is Rav's student, challenge him about this case that you could have admitted between each shvua? Clearly he understood that Rav was said as halacha, even in a case where somebody admitted. Okay? Umar Rav Hamnuna Talmidei de Rav, the Yadadam Rav Hoda. He knew that Rav said as halacha, even in the case of admission. The Kamosiv Hoda, because he was asking from the case of taking 5 shvuas and the ability to admit in between. So clearly he understood that Rav was talking about a case of Hoda. And you think that Rav didn't say it in the case of Hoda? So the fact that all the evidence contradicts Rav is one thing, but let's not misrepresent what Rav was saying, okay? Rav was saying his case, even in the case of Hoda. No. We actually like this answer about Rav. We would like to say that Rav was not contradicting these cases and so on, and was only talking about this. So if Rav was not saying his case in the case of Hoda, what was the challenge from the idea of David taking 5 shuas that he could have been Moda in between? If Rav would have said, Rav would have conceded in that case, if you were Moda, you'd be Chayev. Why was Rav Hamnuna asking for that? Here's what Rav Hamnuna was asking. Because when I made David take a shvua and he swore, okay, falsely, what would have been the case if witnesses would have come, not if he would have admitted? So this is exactly the case that Rav says David would have been pater. Okay, he's nishba, it's not about Geneva, and witnesses came. Okay, you got this? So this is the case that if witnesses came, you'd be pater. If you admit, you'll be chayev. But if witnesses come, you'll be pater. So he would say, here was his question. If you would say Rav is wrong, and that if witnesses came, David would be chayev. That's why he has to pay to bring a korban for his shvuas number 2, 3, 4, and 5, because he's using that shvua is denying me something that I have rights to and that I could bring witnesses to prove I have rights to. Because he could admit. His ability to admit means that it's like it's so what Rashi says here is the ability to admit in this framing does not mean that that whether it would have made you pay or not. The key is you were denying me my rightful money, and if I would have brought witnesses, you would have had to pay. Your ability to admit in between just means that each shvua is seen as a separate shvua. Every shvua is a separate decision to lie again, if you want to do it that way. Right? Anytime you could have admitted at any time doesn't mean that because you would have admitted you would have had to pay me and you're stealing money with each shvua. It means because you could have admitted each shvua is a new lie. It was a new opportunity for you to tell the truth, and it was a new lie, and it was a new shvua, and that's why it's 5 separate shvuas. But the reason you're paying is because witnesses could have proved that you owed me the money, and your shvua is getting you out of a real debt you had to me. Okay, so if Rav would say, so if witnesses came, you'd be chayev, not like Rav. I understand why every shvua you'd have to pay. Okay, but if witnesses came, you'd be exempt, right? If Rav was saying was true, the only way you'd have to pay is if you would admit. But if I would mamish bring witnesses, then you'd be exempt. If that case, could there be any case that if I would have bring witnesses, if Rav was saying the truth and you swore and you brought witnesses, you'd be off the hook? And we should say that you'll have that your shvua makes you obligated in another korban, just because you could have admitted. So right now you're not admitted. Okay. So what basically is a little confusing. Basically, what that was saying is the following: is the only way we're able to make sense of Rav is to say he's talking. The one case is the case about Adam after a kindness oven. Everything else is contradicted by the cases in the Torah. Why was Rav Hamnuna asking about this case of admitting if Rav never said his halach in a case of admitting? Because that's right, it really wasn't about admitting. This is the way Rashi says it. Admitting was just saying that each shvua was a separate lie. Okay, but what that was really about is he was really saying, I get if Rav is wrong and witnesses would make you pay, each shvua is another act of stealing money. But if Rav is right and witnesses would not make you pay, then how do you have a scenario that even if you had witnesses, you wouldn't have to pay, and your shvua is seen as somehow a new act of stealing the money, if you would even be off the hook, even if witnesses were to come. All right, so we've explained Rav Hamnuna's question in order to let us claim that Rav's position is as limited as possible. So this was a very long discussion to deal with a bizarre claim of Rav, which is contradicted not only by all the evidence in the Torah, but also by just simple logic. Why should a false shvua get you off the hook from a real debt? Okay, and not only a debt, Rashi says even if the Torah says, Gemara says even if the object is in your possession. So the best we were able to do was limit Rav to one out of the 4 scenarios. But basically, obviously, people are not happy with Rav. So tomorrow we will pick up, thankfully, with a new topic. Okay, we are still behind, but it's a very short daf tomorrow.